had 14 people in the race. We've defeated a dozen of the fellas. I just have one more I've got to catch up to. And when you look at the news, you don't need them to tell you the economy's good. You don't need them to try and convince you that everything's okay, because you feel it in your wallet. We are stretching our dollars. We are $34 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. And for the first time, we're paying more in interest than we are in our defense budget. Do you know who's paying attention to that? Russia, China, and Iran. And I would love to be able to say, oh, but Joe Biden did that to us. But I've always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Donald Trump and our Republicans did that to us too. You go back and look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability. They expanded welfare that's now left us with 80 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right? Nope. They doubled down and opened up pet projects and earmarks for the first time in 10 years, passing through 7,000 of them last year. In the 2024 appropriations budget, Republicans put in $7.4 billion worth of pet projects. Democrats put in $2.8 billion. Now you tell me who the big spenders are. All while 1 in 6 American families can't afford their utility bill. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers. Something's got to give. Don't you think it's finally time we had an accountant in the White House?
That was the one that fixed this country the first time. You ain't nothing but a neocon.
Drop 2024. Drop 2024.
Anybody else? You know, don't get upset at those fellas, because my husband and his military brothers and sisters sacrifice every day for their right to be able to do that. So now we will get back to talking about something Donald Trump doesn't talk about, which is our debt, right? He doesn't talk about fiscal responsibility. He doesn't talk about anything else that we need to be talking about, but I will. The way we will fix our economy is we need to claw back the $100 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are still sitting out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud. 1 out of every $7 was spent fraudulently. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate their pet projects, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't go back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. And then we're going to take as many federal programs as we can and send them down to the state level. That way we dramatically reduce the size of the federal government, but we empower people on the ground. Think education, think healthcare, think welfare, think mental health. If we cut the strings and send that down, then it's dealt closest to the people instead of having Washington bureaucrats decide that. And then we're watching the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. We have to open up the middle class. That's why we have to cut taxes on the middle class and simplify the brackets. Let's eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And let's make the small business tax cuts permanent. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. Let's prove it by doing something about it. And then I think as much as we talk about Congress, they have one job. Congress just has one job. That's to give us a budget on time. They failed again this week, by the way. Do you know Congress has only given us a budget on time 4 times in 40 years? 4 times in 40 years. You know what I have to say about that? You don't give us a budget on time, you don't get paid, period. Don't you think it's finally time we talk about term limits in Washington, D.C.? Don't you think we need to talk about mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75? Now, let me say this. I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. We all know people over 75 that can run circles around us. And then we know Joe Biden. Congress has become the most privileged nursing home in the country. These are people making decisions on the future of our economy. These are people making decisions on our national security. We need to know they're at the top of their game. We can't play on that. And then let's talk about the border. I can't believe this is happening in the United States of America. 9 million illegal immigrants have come across the border. You're dealing with the northern border as we speak. We had more fentanyl come across the border last year that would kill every single American. Number 1 cause of death for adults 18 to 45, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. Now, as governor of South Carolina, we passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. President Obama sued us over it, and we won. We will take what we did in South Carolina and we'll go national with it. We'll do a national e-verify where every business has to prove that the people they hire are in this country legally. We will defund sanctuary cities once and for all. No more safe havens in America. We'll put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. Let's go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that no one even steps foot on U.S. soil. And instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is what will stop what's happening on the border. But you look at what happened a couple weeks ago. Congress had a border bill. Now, the good part about that border bill was it strengthened asylum laws. We need to do that. 3 million illegal immigrants came in under the Trump watch because our asylum laws weren't strong enough. The weak parts about that bill was it didn't have Remain in Mexico, which we have to have, and it had a 5,000 person threshold. We don't even want a 1-person threshold. But instead, Congress, what they should have done was gotten in a room, strengthened the bill, and then gotten something out. But Donald Trump said, don't pass anything until after the general election because it would hurt him. We can't wait one more day to pass a strong border bill. Congress needs to do their job and Trump needs to stay out of it, period. And growing up in rural South Carolina, my parents always taught me you take care of those who take care of you. But I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, over 35,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs a doctor's appointment at the VA, on average, it takes 29 days. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and the clock starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. Now, I'm the proud wife of a combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. And when Michael came home to us, that was a lot of prayers answered. But that was the easy part. When Michael got home, life got hard. He couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for the year that he was gone, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We got to love them when they come back home, too. That's why we need to make sure we do telehealth so they get the mental health care they need right when they need it. They should be able to go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. And I think the best way we take care of VA health care, I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA, and you watch how fast that gets fixed. It'll be the best health care you've ever seen, guaranteed, I promise. And speaking of the military, let's talk about national security. The world is on fire, literally. We've got a war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got North Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the U.S. You've got China doing cyber attacks on our infrastructure. And now we have Russia blinding satellites so we can't see anything. But make no mistake, none of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. The idea that my husband and his military brothers and sisters who served there had to watch us leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that said to our friends. More importantly, think about what that said to our enemies. Never has there been more of a time where we have got to have a leader with moral clarity. We have to have a leader who knows the difference between right and wrong, between good and bad. And we've got to make sure that the president is always focused on preventing war. That's the number one goal. It should always be about preventing war. And right now, you've got Congress lying to you, saying you've got to choose between Israel and Ukraine versus securing the border. Securing the border is priority number one. But don't let them tell you that we can't do Israel and Ukraine as well. Because dictators always tell us what they're going to do. Putin has said once he takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries that immediately puts America at war. This is about preventing war. And so if we're going to do that, we've got to make sure that when we have a leader of moral clarity, they know their words matter. And 2 weeks ago, what did Donald Trump say? That he would encourage Putin to invade our allies. That means Trump is going to side with a dictator who kills his political opponents. Trump is going to side with a tyrant who arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. Trump's going to side with a madman where 500,000 people have died or been wounded because Putin invaded Ukraine. And Trump is going to side with him, Putin, over our allies who stood with us after 9/11. In that one moment that he went off the teleprompter, he put our allies in a vulnerable position. He emboldened Putin, and he put our men and women who are serving there in danger. That's why it matters. We have to make sure we are always doing whatever it takes to prevent war and protect Americans. So we know what we need to do with our national security. We know what we need to do with domestic policy. Now let's talk about what you need to do on Tuesday. As you look at this election, you have a choice. This is about, do you want more of the same, or do you want to go in a new direction? More tell you, this isn't personal for me. I voted for Donald Trump twice. And look at the past couple of months. What happened? After New Hampshire, when we got that 43% of the vote, if you watched election night, Trump was completely unhinged. All he did was talk about revenge. And my dress, by the way. The next day, he said anybody who supports her is barred permanently from MAGA. Now think about that. If you're a candidate running for president, your job is to bring people in, not push people out of your club. And then the next day he goes and pushes the RNC to name him the presumptive nominee. We don't anoint kings in America. We have elections. And then he had a couple of court cases where he had some judgments come down, and he ranted about being a victim. And then just a couple of days ago, we had a great event in Washington, D.C., and he tweeted about the fact that anybody that was voting for me or supporting me would not have access to him.
Oh, no.
Now, what bothers me about whether it was the night of New Hampshire or whether it's the tweets, at no point is he ever talking about the American people. He's not talking about the fact that we're $34 trillion in debt. He's not talking about the fact that only 31% of eighth graders in our country are proficient in reading. He's not talking about the fact that we have a completely open border. He's not talking about the fact that we have lawlessness in our cities, and he's not talking about the fact that we have wars around the world. All he's doing is talking about himself. And he doesn't understand this isn't about him. This is about the American people. You know, 8 months ago, I dropped my husband Michael off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to sacrifice for us there, shouldn't we be willing to fight for America here? Because we have a country to save. And you look at any of the polls right now, any of the polls, on his best day, he squeaks by. I'm in every one of those polls, and I defeat Joe Biden by 18 points. Do you know what that means? That's bigger than the presidency. That's House, that's Senate, that's governorships. That's us really getting our country back on track. But you win with double digits like that. You're going into D.C. with a mandate to stop the wasteful spending and get our economy back on track. A mandate to get our kids reading again and go back to the basics in education. A mandate to secure our borders with no more excuses. A mandate for law and order back in our cities. And a mandate for a strong America that prevents wars that we can all be proud of. Don't you want that? Because we could have that. But it takes a lot of courage. Courage from everybody in this room. Courage for me to run. And courage for every one of you to know, don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't vote in this primary. It matters. You know, you have fellas that got upset here earlier, wanting to know why I don't drop out. Why is she still doing this? Why doesn't she just cave to Trump? I think I've pretty much put everybody to ease that this is not for me running for vice president. This is not about my political career. If it was, I would have been out a long time ago. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for your kids and your grandkids. Look at what the younger generation has gone through. They went through COVID, which was traumatic. They see this $34 trillion in debt, and they get that they're going to have to be responsible for it. They worry about where they're going to get a job. They worry about how they're going to make ends meet. They don't think they're ever going to be able to afford a home. And they worry about wars around the world. And all of this is under an umbrella of anger and division. And then we want to know why there's so much stress, anxiety, and depression. Our kids deserve to know what normal feels like. It's not normal under Joe Biden to have millions of illegal immigrants come across and nobody stopped them. It's not normal under Joe Biden to have these wars around the world. It's not normal for Donald Trump to go and side with a dictator over our allies. It's not normal with Donald Trump to go and make fun of members of the military. It's not normal for Donald Trump to spend $60 million in campaign contributions on his own personal court cases. And it's not normal that Joe Biden calls his opponents fascists and Donald Trump calls his opponents vermin. None of that is normal. We've got to get to where we're at a place that we can get things done again. Can you imagine a country where we could sit down to dinner and not have a political fight? Can you imagine a country where you could go to work and say what you think and not worry about being demoted? Can you imagine a country where we could strongly disagree but not hate each other over it? That's what we're fighting for. That's what we want. That's what our kids deserve. And this is really going to the heart of where is the Republican Party going? Because I'm the Republican that believes in fiscal discipline, smaller government, paying down debt, lower taxes, more money in taxpayers' pockets. Donald Trump put us $8 trillion in debt in just 4 years, more than any other president. He likes to say it was because of COVID. That was less than 20%. He didn't shrink government, he grew it. He didn't clean up those agencies, he made them more bloated. And he's still not talking about fiscal discipline. He's still not talking about the debt. And then you look, his Republican Party doesn't look at national security as peace through strength. Doesn't look at national security as building up your alliances so that your enemies are intimidated. His national security is walking away from those alliances. His national security is standing alone. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. And now you look at the RNC party structure itself. Before the primary is even over, he's replaced the head of the RNC with his daughter-in-law. His campaign manager's now running it, whereas it used to win seats up and down the ticket and help support those. Now they said, no, the RNC now is just going to be about Donald Trump, which means it's just going to be his own legal slush fund. We can't have that. Because now what that means is if that's the Republican Party, that party's just focused on one man. I'm part of a Republican Party that's focused on the American people and lifting up everyone. You know, when I announced, they asked me why I was doing this, and I said, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for Michael and his military brothers and sisters. They need to know their sacrifice matters. They need to know that we love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. The average home buyer in America now is 49 years old. The American dream is leaving them. And I'm doing this for my son, who's a senior in college. And I am tired of watching him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And for the first time, 81% of Americans don't think their kids are going to have as good of a life as we did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We do have a country to save. So this is where you get to work. We need to make sure we go out in force on Tuesday. You can't go by yourself. You got to take 10 people with you. You need to take a yard sign. If you can't have a yard sign in your yard, you should put it in the back of your car. And you need to text and email everybody you know. Because so many of them are just general election voters. And I want you to give them a message from me. In a general election, you're given a choice. In a primary, we make our choice. This is the time for us to make our choice. This is the time for us to be loud and let everybody know that America is better than what we see right now. We can do better than two 80-year-old candidates. We can do something where we have a new generational leader that will put in 8 years, day and night of hard work, no negativity, no vendettas, no drama, just real results for the American people. Yeah. Now is the time. So if you will join our movement and if you will join our fight, my promise to you is that our best days are yet to come. Thank you very much, Portland. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. God bless you.
New song. New song. Hell yeah.